He said he cared, and then disappeared like it meant nothing. One moment you felt chosen, the next you were left questioning everything. And the worst part isn't his silence, it's how it makes you doubt your own worth. But what if this isn't about him pulling away? What if this is the moment that reveals whether you'll finally choose yourself? He tells you he likes you, opens up, shares something real and personal, and then suddenly disappears. One moment he's warm, affectionate, fully present, and the next he feels distant, cold, almost unreachable. And you're left replaying everything in your mind, asking yourself the same question again and again. Is he actually falling in love, or is he just playing with your emotions? But what if what feels like confusion isn't confusion at all? What if sometimes, when a man starts to fall deeply, he doesn't move closer, he pulls away? Not because he doesn't care, but because the intensity of what he feels scares him more than he expected. You know that feeling when your heart starts hoping for something real, but deep inside something feels off. When his actions don't align with his words, and the inconsistency leaves you drained, yet somehow more attached. That emotional push and pull can shake even the most self-aware woman. It creates doubt, not just about him, but about your own judgment. If you've ever loved deeply, if you've experienced both the beauty and the pain of connection, and you still believe real love exists beyond fear and ego, then this matters. There's a quiet moment that often goes unnoticed. No drama, no confrontation, just a subtle shift. He stops calling as much. His messages become shorter, less expressive. It feels like he's stepping back without saying it out loud. And suddenly, you start questioning everything that once felt certain. In that silence, something inside you wakes up. A quiet voice asking, "Am I safe? Am I valued? Or am I being pulled into something unhealthy again?" What many people don't realize is that when a man begins to fall in love, it can feel destabilizing for him too. It challenges his sense of control, reopens old emotional wounds, and forces him to face parts of himself he may have avoided for years. So instead of leaning in, he retreats, not to hurt you, but to check if what he's stepping into feels secure. Without even being aware of it, he may be triggering your emotions just to see what happens. Will you stay grounded when he pulls back? Will you remain calm when his affection fades for a moment? For a woman who has experienced toxic patterns or emotional inconsistency before, this can feel painfully familiar. It touches something deeper, something from the past. The part of you that learned love comes with uncertainty, and suddenly, it's not just about him anymore. It's about needing reassurance to feel safe. That's where the real test begins. Not his test of you, but your test of yourself. Because in that silence, your mind starts racing. Did I do something wrong? Is he losing interest? Do I need to fix this? Do I need to prove myself again? But what if his silence isn't rejection? What if it's a reflection, showing you where you still abandon yourself just to keep someone close? Maybe it's not about earning his love. Maybe it's about holding on to your own stability. A woman who knows her worth doesn't chase mixed signals. She doesn't spiral when a man becomes distant. She stays grounded, not in his attention, but in her own sense of calm. She understands that real power doesn't come from controlling someone else's behavior. It comes from trusting herself. She doesn't beg for closeness to ease her fear. She allows space and lets the truth reveal itself. And whether he realizes it or not, he's watching. Not your words, but your emotional state. Can you handle uncertainty without losing yourself? Can you stay centered when things feel unclear? That's where real connection is tested. Because true intimacy isn't built on constant reassurance. It grows through emotional stability, through the quiet confidence that says, "I'll be okay, no matter what." When you reach that place, something shifts. He feels it. That calm, grounded energy becomes magnetic. It's not about chasing or forcing anything. It's about presence. And that kind of presence draws people in naturally. But it doesn't stop there. The next layer of this dynamic shows up in a different way, not through distance, but through boundaries. Maybe you're spending time together. Everything feels light and easy, and then he makes a comment that doesn't sit right. Something about your past, your personality, or even your appearance. Maybe it's disguised as a joke, but it carries a sting. Or maybe he crosses a physical or emotional line you didn't invite. And suddenly, you're left wondering, was that harmless or was that intentional? This is another kind of test. Not about connection, but about self-respect. Can you hold your ground even with someone you care about? At a deeper level, every man wants to understand a woman's boundaries. He needs to feel that her standards are real, not flexible depending on the situation, because no one can build something meaningful with someone who abandons themselves at the first sign of pressure. It's like trying to build a house without solid walls. It won't last. Real feminine strength isn't passive. It's aware, intuitive, and firm without being aggressive. It doesn't try to control. It simply decides what is acceptable and what isn't. This is where it gets difficult for many women, especially those who've been hurt before. The desire to keep things peaceful can conflict with the need to protect yourself. Do you ignore the discomfort to avoid tension, or do you calmly speak your truth? Because it's never just about the comment or the moment, it's about how quickly you silence yourself just to maintain connection. Many women learned early on that speaking up leads to rejection, so they stay quiet, hoping love will fill the gaps. But silence teaches others that your boundaries can be crossed. A woman with self-respect understands that every uncomfortable moment is an opportunity to show how she deserves to be treated. She doesn't react with anger, and she doesn't shrink either. She simply says what feels true, and when she does, something changes. The energy shifts. She's no longer just someone to be liked. She becomes someone to be respected. After that, there's often another quiet phase. He pulls back again, observing, wondering if your confidence is real or just temporary. And this is where it goes even deeper, because now he says very little, maybe nothing at all. He just watches how you carry yourself when he's not actively feeding the connection. There's nothing more confusing than silence after vulnerability. One day he tells you how much he values you, how easy it feels to be with you, how rare your energy is, and then suddenly he disappears into his own space, not completely, but enough to make you question everything, enough to make your mind go over every detail, every word, every pause. It's not loud rejection, it's quiet distance, and that's what makes it so powerful. It's that quiet kind of uncertainty that gets to you, the kind that doesn't shout, but lingers. His silence feels heavy, almost overwhelming, and you keep wondering, why would he open up like that, only to pull away right after? The truth is, when a man starts developing real emotional feelings, when the connection begins to deepen, his first instinct isn't always to come closer. Sometimes it's to create distance, not to hurt you, but to see if what's forming between you can survive space. He wants to know if he can be fully seen and still feel safe. So he steps back, not as punishment, but to observe whether you can sit with that discomfort without losing yourself. For him, love isn't just about closeness. It's also about risk. The risk of being vulnerable, of being understood too deeply, of needing someone. And in that space of risk, something powerful happens for both of you. His distance brings your hidden fears to the surface, the parts of you that are afraid of being left, that long for reassurance, that still believe love has to be earned. But if in that moment you can stay grounded, if you don't chase, don't over-explain, don't beg for answers, then you pass the only test that truly matters, because real love doesn't grow through chasing or trying to prove your worth. It grows through presence, through two people who can face uncertainty, stay open, and still remain whole within themselves. Still, that silence can stir something deep inside you. Old memories resurface, times when you were ignored, left without explanation, or made to feel like you weren't enough. Your body reacts as if it's happening all over again. It's not just emotional, it's physical. Your system goes on alert, sensing danger where there might not actually be any. And if you're not aware of it, you react automatically. You start reaching out more, sending messages, trying to fix what feels broken, even if nothing actually is. That's how the cycle begins, the emotional loop that keeps you tied to confusion. But when a woman has done the inner work, when she has grown into her own sense of stability, that silence doesn't feel the same anymore. It stops being something to fear. Instead, it becomes a moment to pause, to reflect, to breathe. She doesn't rush to fill the gap. She understands that not every silence means rejection. She becomes steady, calm, present. Not because she doesn't care, but because she finally understands that her emotional safety doesn't come from controlling someone else. It comes from being anchored within herself. And whether he realizes it or not, he's paying attention. He wants to see what happens when he steps back. Do you fall apart? Do you confront him with frustration? Or do you stay grounded, manage your emotions, and continue living your life without trying to prove your value? Through that quiet observation, he begins to see something deeper. Not just how you react, but how you relate to yourself. He notices your composure, your emotional strength, your ability to remain whole even when things feel uncertain. And that changes something in him. It shifts from simple attraction to something deeper, a sense of trust. Because a woman who doesn't lose herself in his absence becomes someone he can feel safe with in his presence. And safety has many layers. Sometimes the next phase doesn't come through distance, but through closeness, through vulnerability. He starts opening up little by little, carefully, watching how you respond when he shows you parts of himself he usually keeps hidden. Even the most confident man carries fears about being truly seen. You might notice it in the way his voice softens when he talks about his past, or when he admits he's not as confident as he appears, or when he shares a painful experience that he rarely speaks about. These moments aren't casual, they're meaningful. They're him building a bridge into his inner world. And behind each of those moments is a silent question. Will you still see me the same way after this? For many men, especially those who were taught that vulnerability is weakness, opening up feels exposed, almost uncomfortable. It's like standing without protection, waiting to see how you'll respond. He's not just sharing, he's observing. Can you hold what he shares without judging him or pulling away? This is where your presence matters more than anything. Not fixing, not reacting, not trying to rescue. Just being steady, calm, and real. Listening without making it about you. Allowing him to feel seen without trying to take control of his emotions. But this is also where things can go wrong. If you've spent your life being the one who heals others, who fixes things to feel valued, his vulnerability can pull you into that role again. Without realizing it, you stop being his partner and start becoming his emotional caretaker. You begin carrying things that were never yours to carry, and he feels that shift. It becomes too much, not because he doesn't care, but because it starts to feel like dependence instead of connection. A woman with strong self-worth doesn't get lost in a man's pain. She doesn't try to become his solution. She listens, she supports, but she stays grounded in herself. She allows him to face his own struggles while offering a space where he feels accepted. And in that balance, something meaningful happens. He starts to understand that love doesn't mean losing himself, that closeness doesn't require giving up independence, that emotional safety isn't about avoiding discomfort, but about facing it without fear of judgment. He realizes he can show his flaws, his doubts, even his darker sides, and still be met with understanding, not consumed by it, not judged for it. But even then, another layer of doubt can appear in his mind. He may start wondering, Is your understanding real, or is it temporary? Is your patience consistent, or does it depend on him being at his best? He doesn't ask these questions directly, he watches. And then, without making it obvious, another subtle situation appears. Maybe you're out together and someone else gives you attention. A smile from a stranger, a compliment from a friend, or even just mentioning another man in conversation. In that moment, his focus shifts, not so much on the other person, but on you. He's observing quietly, not from insecurity, but from instinct. He's asking himself, can I trust her when I'm not the center of her attention? Is her loyalty real, even when it's not being tested directly? For a man who is starting to feel deeply, especially if he's been hurt before, trust isn't automatic. It builds slowly, through consistency. Not just in what you say, but in how you carry yourself in small, everyday moments. He's not reacting like a child. He's simply watching, learning, trying to understand if what you have is something real, something steady, something he can rely on. He doesn't react in obvious ways. Instead, he pays attention to something deeper. Your alignment, your direction, where your energy naturally goes. When attention comes your way from others, he quietly notices how you respond. It's not about controlling you or claiming you. It's about understanding your orientation. Do you stay centered in yourself and in the connection, not out of obligation, but because you genuinely choose it? Or does attention become something you play with to feel valued? These small moments say more than words ever could. And if you've been shaped by rejection or abandonment, if your past made you feel like love could disappear at any time, you might not even realize how you respond. You may seek validation without meaning to. Maybe you flirt a little just to remind yourself you're still wanted. Maybe you bring up someone from your past, not to compare, but to reassure yourself that you mattered once. These habits don't come from manipulation. They come from wounds, from a time when love didn't feel stable, when being chosen felt temporary. So even if you truly care about this man, a part of you may still be asking, am I enough? And if this ends, will I still have control over my worth? You may not say it out loud, but he feels it. In your tone, in your energy, in the way your attention lingers just a little too long somewhere else. He can sense when you're divided, when part of you is present with him, but another part is searching for safety outside of the connection. And if he's emotionally aware, that unsettles him. Because for him, loyalty isn't about ownership, it's about stability within you. When he meets a woman who doesn't need external validation to feel secure, something shifts inside him. He feels peace. A woman who is grounded in herself doesn't act loyal. She naturally is. She doesn't dim her light to keep a man comfortable, but she also doesn't use her light to attract unnecessary attention. Her confidence is quiet. Her boundaries are clear. She moves through the world with a calm sense of self that says, without words, my worth is not something to be negotiated. And when a man experiences that kind of presence, it does something to him. He begins to relax, not because he's weak, but because he finally feels safe enough to be real, safe enough to drop the performance and just be himself. But trust doesn't happen instantly. It builds over time, through patterns, through moments that seem small but carry weight. That's why the next layer isn't about distance or jealousy. It's about your beliefs. He may start to challenge your views in subtle ways, not aggressively, but enough to see how grounded you really are. You might share something important to you, like therapy, your goals, or your passions, and he responds with a half-joking comment that questions it. On the surface, it feels light, but underneath, he's observing. Can you stand in what you believe without needing him to agree? Can you stay open without becoming defensive? He's not really testing your opinions. He's feeling into your foundation. He wants to know if your confidence is real or if it depends on approval. When a man begins to feel deeply, he's not only drawn to your softness, he's drawn to your structure, your inner stability. He wants to know if you can hold yourself when things aren't easy. Many women, especially those who've experienced difficult relationships, learned that being agreeable was the safest path. Speaking up felt risky, so they adapted. They stayed quiet, softened their truth, tried to keep the peace at all costs. But that kind of silence comes at a price. A woman who has healed doesn't need to fight to prove herself, and she doesn't shrink to be accepted. She meets those moments with calm presence. She listens, she considers, but she stays rooted in who she is. She doesn't react from fear, she responds with clarity, and that's what stands out, because most people either get defensive or withdraw when challenged. But she stays steady, she reflects, she thinks, and she answers from a place of self-awareness. In that moment, he realizes something important. She doesn't rely on his approval to feel secure. She knows who she is, and that's what makes her magnetic. Still, a quiet curiosity remains in him. Is her strength consistent, or does it fade when things get difficult? So life brings another kind of moment. Not loud, not dramatic, just small shifts. A change in his tone, a comment that feels slightly off, a bit of distance where there used to be warmth. And suddenly, something inside you reacts. That familiar feeling returns. This doesn't feel safe. Even if things are better than before, part of your system remembers the past. It expects things to go wrong, and sometimes without meaning to, he mirrors those old patterns. Not because he's wrong for you, but because real connection has a way of bringing old wounds to the surface. It's like your mind is asking, does this still control you? And in those moments, he's watching. Not in a calculated way, but instinctively. How do you respond when something triggers you? Do you lose your voice? Do you try to fix everything? Do you fall back into proving your worth? Or do you stay with yourself this time? Do you feel the discomfort without abandoning who you are? That's where real growth happens, not in being perfect, but in being aware, in noticing the pattern and choosing differently. A woman with deep self-worth doesn't avoid difficult moments. She moves through them without losing herself. She speaks her truth without turning it into blame. She feels her emotions without expecting someone else to fix them. And when she does that, something softens in him too. He sees that she's not chasing perfection. She's choosing presence. He sees that she doesn't need him to rescue her because she already knows how to hold herself. But even then, one final question remains in him. Not spoken, but felt. Can she stay strong when love isn't easy? Or will she stay even when it starts to hurt? So without even realizing it, he pulls back one more time. Not to see if you'll hold on, but to see if you know when to let go. And this is where everything becomes clear. The energy changes. He's there, but not fully. The warmth fades. The connection that once felt alive starts to feel distant. And you feel it, but you hold on, hoping he'll return to who he was in the beginning. You tell yourself maybe he's just going through something. Maybe this is where your love proves itself. But this is often the hardest moment, because what looks like love can actually be self-abandonment. He stops showing up the same way, becomes distant, less present. And while it feels like rejection, what's really being revealed is something deeper. Will you lose yourself again just to keep him? Many women do, especially those who learn that love has to be earned. They accept less and call it patience. They tolerate distance and call it loyalty. But in reality, they're disappearing. Real strength isn't about how much you can give. It's about how much you can face without losing who you are. And this is where a woman who truly knows her worth rises, not with anger, not with pride, but with clarity. She doesn't chase what's fading. She doesn't beg or try to convince. She simply lets go with quiet strength. Her power comes from remembering that love isn't meant to cost her peace. And yes, it still hurts. Letting go always does. But it's a clean kind of pain. The kind that heals instead of breaking you. And if he truly cared, he feels it too. The absence she leaves behind carries weight, because she didn't manipulate, didn't play games, didn't ask for anything unreasonable. She was ready to love, but not at the cost of losing herself. And that's what stays with him. Not anger, not drama, but the quiet realization of what he lost. Because her leaving wasn't just an ending, it was a reflection, a reminder of what real love looks like. And maybe one day he understands that if he ever wants something real, he has to stop testing it and start showing up for it. And this is what you need to remember. When someone pulls away or creates uncertainty, it's not always about them. Sometimes it's an invitation for you to rise, to stay aligned with your truth, and to choose yourself. You're not here to prove your worth to anyone. You're here to remember it. This was never just about him pulling away. It was about you remembering who you are when love feels uncertain. Real strength isn't in holding on to someone who fades, but in standing firm in your own worth when everything tests it. The moment you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, everything becomes clear. Because the right love won't require you to lose yourself to keep it. And the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your heart intact and your dignity untouched.